A fight over Taiwan would spell huge trouble for the US trade and tech sector. Taiwan, high-stakes tech hub, a high-tech hub, and makes 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips. US companies on the island include Google, Microsoft and IBM. Joining us now is Rupert Hammond-Chambers, president of the US-Taiwan Business Council, which represents businesses with ties to Taiwan. Rupert, fantastic to have you with us. What are your members saying about this visit, and how concerned are they about the repercussions?
Good morning, Julia, and thank you very much for having me on your show. There's a great deal of anxiety within the C-suite level of our company members over tensions in the Taiwan Strait. I would want to convey that at some level, the large tech companies that you mentioned and pretty much all technology companies at some level are engaged with Taiwan, given its prowess in the technology supply chain. They are at some level conditioned to deal with the tension in the Taiwan Strait and the differences between China and Taiwan politically. And yet they still have deployed billions and billions of dollars worth of capital, and money continues to flow in, perhaps more at a more volatile level in respect to capital markets. But for cement and steel, that is still pouring in. Commitments to R&D is still pouring in. So it can look contradictory given what's just happened or is happening around Mrs. Pelosi's trip. But overall, there's a great deal of concern amongst the business community over heightened tensions in the Strait.
It's what businesses do. It's an assessment of the risk rewards, as I was just asking John Harwood before you. I guess it goes to the question of how much protection Taiwan is afforded for those economic purposes, if nothing else, for a nation that provides, 65% of the world's semiconductors, particularly in light of recent policy pronouncements from the White House, even if some of them were reversed. Is there a fundamental belief that actually Taiwan will be afforded more protection, perhaps, than on paper is suggested?
I think there is I like the question a lot, Julia, thank you. I think there is a space between the concerns of companies and the direction they're taking their businesses. There's also a COVID piece to supply chain disruption and how companies are looking at supply chains that run into China. That's also hugely important in the changes that companies are making. So I would want to reference that. It's the shifts that we're seeing in respect to how capital is deployed for businesses and how they look at Taiwan is partly tensions in the Taiwan Strait, and it's partly a broader lessons learned or lessons being learned post-COVID, and what companies should do about putting too many eggs in one basket, the China basket, and how they might necessarily shift investment into South Asia, Southeast Asia, perhaps Eastern Europe. So this is what we're seeing anyway. And actually capital returning to Taiwan. We've seen a significant expansion, particularly from Taiwan's supply chain partners for the big tech guys back into Taiwan.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many fascinating observations in there, and you can understand why the Europeans have signed their equivalent of a CHIPS Act, why the United States players here were so desperate to boost production here simply just to diversify the supply chains. If we look at the broader policy, though, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, on how the United States in particular handles the relationship with China, I can't help but feel that we're in many ways reverting back to the stance that existed prior to the Trump administration, who enacted all sorts of tariffs and took a far more perhaps front foot approach to China, and some of the threats that China made or posed relative to this administration and perhaps previous administrations. How does it feel to you, and again, and to the business community, how they perceive the shifts?
Yeah, I agree with you, Julia. I think the concern from our organization is the potential for regression pre-2017, where we were in a bipartisan, accommodationist approach to China, which had the US and our policy interests on the back foot, and China assertive and ascendant. That was a significant problem for businesses, although it felt safe and secure, the notion that tensions in the Strait were less than. But what it really meant as a practical matter was that China was in the driver's seat. IP was being stolen, trade secrets were being stolen. We had real problems with the Chinese where there wasn't significant pushback from 2000 through to 2017. Mr. Trump comes in, there's a shift. It is bipartisan. Democrats supported that shift. And in fairness to Mr. Biden, it continued through most of last year. But now we're starting to see a worrying shift that we may be entertaining the notion that China's considerations of its interests in the Strait are going to be ascendant again in U.S. policy. And that worries U.S. businesses because the U.S. business community wants to feel like the U.S. government has its back in investing in Taiwan, investing in China when it's legal and reasonable. And when that isn't the case, it causes concern all the way up and down the companies.
It's a two-sided coin, though, isn't it? Because the US-China tariffs that were imposed had a sort of negative impact on many of the American businesses as well, depending on, the consequences of who paid the tariffs where and when. In your mind, then, is the removal of the tariffs has been mooted, at least under this administration, the wrong move to make at the wrong time?
Certainly, from our standpoint, different companies are going to have different views parochially, but generally, from the trade association standpoint, we like the notion that there's a full court press on China, and that companies are given some breathing room in as much time as potentially can be created to adjust supply chains. I think there is a recognition that both the geostrategic risks as well as the economic risks of putting too many eggs in the China basket has to be addressed, but it takes time. And I think a big question to pose for you and for your viewers is how much time do we have? What are we looking at from a time standpoint in respect to the trajectory of US-China relations and what that means for deployed capital in Taiwan, deployed capital in China, and any shifts in supply chains that might reasonably ensure that US citizens and global citizens outside of the China market specifically are able to access the goods and services they need if, God forbid, there's any kind of contingency in the Taiwan Strait.
It's exactly what I was going to ask you, Rupert, in terms of timing, particularly in light of what we've seen between Russia and Ukraine. I think it's raised the question of China's ambitions with regards to Taiwan, and they've been consistent. We just don't have a sense of timing and how they would choose to do it. Do you? How are you even talking to your members about this in terms of time frame, if indeed something happened?
Yeah, what we discourage is any discussion sort of beyond 5 to 7 years, because who can really tell in that regard? I'm sure one could find people who could comment on that, but is it really practical? Is it really useful? I would argue no. What we're really looking at is what's reasonable over the next 3 to 5 years, and what are the major benchmarks that Beijing would look at, DC would look at, and Taipei would look at, that could potentially represent a significant shift in the behavior of, let's call a spade, China. I mean, they are the aggressor. They're the hegemonic power. They're the ones who are disrupting the Taiwan Strait with their military actions and their force modernization. So we want to look at potential actions. A good way to illustrate that potentially is elections, of course. We'll have elections in Taiwan in January of 2024. We'll have elections here in the States in November of 2024. What will those look like? Personalities and leadership matter. Of course, we all understand that, Julia. And in this instance, it matters enormously. Of course, we can see the difference between Mr. Obama and Mr. Trump, Mr. Biden. And of course, the difference in Taiwan between Mr. Ma and President Tsai. There are huge shifts in policy attitudes, which have ramifications for China policy and consequently how the Chinese respond to those.
Yes, and President Xi, of course, too, later this year with the Party Congress. Rupert, great to get your insights. Yeah. Thank you so much. Come back to us and talk again soon.
Julia. Thanks so much.
Rupert Hammond-Chambers, likewise, the President of the US-Taiwan Business Council there.